Hello, fellow working class comrades. It's your favorite working class hero here, Ralphie the Revolutionary. And on previous shows, I've talked about other heroes of the working class, like Second Thought, who is a YouTuber who specializes in documentary-style educational videos, where he just says a bunch of facts about stuff like capitalism over some fancy stock footage. And some of you have suggested, hey Ralphie, maybe you should make a documentary-style educational video. So, I made one. And here it is. Let me know what you think in the comments when it's over. America, a country that we were told was founded on two conflicting ideas: democracy and capitalism. Democracy is the idea that everyone in society gets a say in how property is distributed. Capitalism is the idea that property should be privately owned by individuals, which leads to wealth inequality. And that's not fair! Advocates for capitalism, or as us enlightened folks like to call them, neoliberal bootlickers. They like to throw around talking points from right-wing think tanks, such as, you say you hate capitalism, yet you enjoy stuff like MacBooks and iPhones and coffee and automobiles and video games made by giant corporations. And yeah, sure, video games are made by giant corporations like Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft and now Google and Amazon. And yeah, sure, video games are fun, but does anybody really need to play video games? Especially when the time that's spent on playing video games can be spent on things that actually matter, like building working class solidarity and looking after the less fortunate. If anything, your precious PlayStation keeps you complacent. The ownership class probably created video games to keep you distracted, so you talk yourself into accepting a 9-to-5 job where you work for slave wages because, hey, at least you have a fancy flat-screen television and an Xbox and an iPhone to enjoy during the time when your labor value is not being stolen. And maybe you tell yourself, well, I make pretty good money. What's the big deal? And I'm sure a lot of neoliberal bootlickers will talk about how millennials are actually making higher wages compared to previous generations. But what these neoliberal bootlickers don't tell you is about all of the labor value that's being stolen. Just take a look at this chart that shows how wages have not kept up with worker productivity. That's money that your employer is keeping for themselves instead of giving it to you. And that's not fair! Just look at all of this garbage. Capitalism creates a bunch of cheap plastic crap that you only use once or twice, and then capitalism expects you to pay for waste management to take the plastic crap from your curb to a landfill. Just imagine what could be made out of the land if it were not being used to store garbage for hundreds of years. And how much good we could do if we spent billions of dollars on actually helping human beings rather than spending it on cheap plastic crap for fleeting enjoyment. Oh wow, look at the time. Literally. Look at the time! Have you ever considered that maybe the ownership class invented clocks so that they can condition you into planning your day around work with precision? Time is just a social construct, and social constructs are invented by those in power to maintain their power over the working class. This is a reason why the super mega ultra wealthy are becoming increasingly obsessed with prolonging life, with stuff like biotechnology and research and development into reverse aging. It's bad enough that capitalism has created wealth and income inequality. Soon, we're going to see a dramatic increase in time inequality as the super mega ultra wealthy spend their money on living longer than the average Joe. And that's not fair! This is why we need to socialize the healthcare system with programs like Medicare for All. It's not about offering a higher quality of healthcare or innovation, as neoliberal bootlickers like to argue, but rather it's about ensuring that everyone gets treated by healthcare providers equally, even if it means that everyone lives shorter lives. Speaking of social constructs, have you ever thought about the concept of beauty? The elites think that they can define what's beautiful and what's not beautiful, so that they can swindle the working class into spending billions of dollars on fashion and beauty products like hairspray, hair dye, hair extensions, lipstick, eye makeup, Botox, fake boobies, fake butts. So instead of questioning whether or not everyone is getting their basic needs met, or if everyone is making a living wage, people are obsessed with trying to look beautiful. And does anybody really need to be beautiful? Even if we were to agree that beauty is not subjective, it is the case that the members of the millionaire class, like the Kardashians and the Jenners, are able to afford more and better beauty products than those in the working class, which really just perpetuates beauty inequality. And that's not fair! Are we as a society proud of the fact that people get paid millions and millions of dollars to dribble a basketball or make misogynistic music videos while we barely spend any money on education? Now, a lot of neoliberal bootlickers will point to charts and statistics about how education spending has increased steadily over the last half century, but it is still not enough. While billionaire elites like Jeff Bezos zoom around space, schools in America barely receive any funding. Just imagine if we as a society spent the entire GDP on education. Nobody would be stupid anymore. Even Cuba, a country that a lot of neoliberal bootlickers like to point to as a failure of socialism, has a higher literacy rate than the United States. A common argument against socialist Cuba is that a lot of Cuban refugees brave the shark-infested waters in the Caribbean in hopes of escaping to Florida. Yeah, these are probably fascist neoliberal bootlickers who are afraid of getting a quality education. And who really wants people like that? Although the real problem with the education system is the existence of private education. The existence of private education contributes to education and knowledge inequality, because the goal of education should not be to train students how to think or how to learn or how to acquire knowledge and skills, but rather the purpose of education should be to make sure that everyone is equal in terms of knowledge and skills. Of course, in unfettered, unregulated capitalist America, the elites are incentivized to keep schools underfunded so that the working class remains uneducated so that the ownership class can exploit them. But hey, at least these underpaid workers can still enjoy watching millionaires throw around a football on their day off as greedy corporations profit off selling the working class nachos and beer to choke down while watching the big game, increasing their risk of health problems so that big pharma and the for-profit healthcare system can exploit them once again. And that is not good. This is capitalism, you guys. 97% of scientists agree that capitalism created climate change, and that everyone will literally die unless we end capitalism. But now, even the ownership class is trying to cash in on climate hysteria, presenting market solutions. The elites got everyone addicted to fossil fuels and cars, which perpetuate the notion of individual self-reliance rather than community public transportation like trains and subways where people travel together. But even worse, cars rely on combustion engines. And after cars have helped contribute to climate change, now the elites demand that we buy their new electric cars and solar panels and wind turbines. As working class hero Michael Moore once said,
"It was long past time for me to come to grips with the other elephant in the living room, the profit motive. The only reason we've been force-fed the story climate change plus renewables equals worse saved is because billionaires, bankers, and corporations profit from it. And the reason we're not talking about overpopulation, consumption, and the suicide of economic growth, as that would be bad for business, especially the cancerous form of capitalism that rules the world.
The elites create climate change and then insist that they're the ones that can stop climate change from happening. Maybe that's because they're afraid that if the working class travel together on trains and subways, that we might build solidarity and eventually rise up and seize the means of production. And spare me this hogwash about how under capitalism, the standard of living improves much more than in any other political system because of stuff like increased production and innovation, and that without the state forcefully taking people's money for stuff like welfare programs, that there would be an abundance of charity. Yeah, a lot of neoliberal bootlickers like to point to billionaire philanthropists like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett who are charitable with their money. Well, even if that's the case, does this make the system fair? Wouldn't you rather have a say in how Bill Gates' wealth is distributed? Hell, wouldn't you rather have a say in how all wealth and property are distributed? This is the ideal of democratic socialism. Democracy in the workplace and democracy over all material stuff in society. If the betterment of society is the standard for morality, then society as a whole should have a say in how everything is distributed, including your money and your property. If you disagree, then you're a selfish jerk. If you enjoyed this educational video and want to see more like it, then consider giving me your money by subscribing on Patreon.